From taking Adonis out of his uncle's shadow and into the spotlight, to bringing a superb new talent out in the open. Here's why Sylvester Stallone leaving Creed made it a much better franchise. It all starts with bringing Adonis into focus in the trilogy film. Not that he didn't take center stage in the previous Creed films, but in those films, Stallone had a big hand in refining and directing his journey. Stallone was the father figure Adonis needed to bring out of the fighter in him, and lift him up whenever he faltered. Because the franchise was just starting out, it needed Rocky Balboa to stay true to its origins. But Adonis couldn't always stay in his mentor's shadow. In fact, by the end of Creed 2, he'd become his own person, complete with a family and a career. So it didn't make sense to bring him back into apprentice mode, and it probably would have ruined the feel of the film entirely. Bringing Adonis's past, present, and relationships into focus was a good call by the writers. I'm not saying that wouldn't have happened if Rocky had been by his side, but it was time for Adonis to spread his own wings. That made for a much more layered and compelling story than if they'd followed the same formula as Creed 1 and 2. So that's one reason why Stallone's departure made the franchise even better. And according to fans, Rocky's story had come full circle at this point, and his arc was finally complete. Can't say that I disagree. In fact, I'd say it had gone past the circle way back in 2006 when Rocky Balboa came out. I understand that he had to be there to bring Creed up to speed in his world. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Sylvester didn't need to be in Creed. I just don't see why he had to be a pillar of the story. Even though he was missed during Marie Anne's funeral, or during Adonis's training. But they could have at least put a few pictures of Rocky around Adonis's house, rather than erase him entirely. With that said, Rocky couldn't be the face of the Creed franchise forever. We all get it, Rocky's Sly's baby through and through. And just like there wouldn't be a Creed without Balboa, the franchise wouldn't exist without Stallone either. But when it comes to his character arc, they gave him a really great ending in Creed 2, especially when he visited his estranged son to make up for years of not being there. So it wouldn't really make sense to bring him back after all that. And there's also the fact that the franchise needed a facelift. Creed 1 and 2 were successful because they told the story of an underdog who was learning to fight back. Whether it was Adonis's fight with Conlon or his bout with Victor, he needed Sly's character to guide him through them all. But it was high time that they moved away from that direction, because if they hadn't, we'd have a trilogy of the same story rehashing over and over again. As I said earlier, Creed 2 gave Adonis's character an arc that was totally independent of his mentor's shadows. He grew up, became a successful boxer, and running back to Rocky every time he faced a difficult opponent wouldn't make sense. So yeah, the franchise definitely needed a facelift. Otherwise, it would have gone through the curse of the prequel, making it yet another trilogy that lost its essence and its structure. And there's another reason why the Creed franchise is better off without Stallone: dollars and cents. The numbers speak for themselves. For the first movie, the franchise made $29.6 million, which was a moderate success, considering how the film was bringing our beloved Rocky back on screen. For the second movie, the franchise made $35.5 million, which was successful enough to warrant a third film, even if it wasn't the highest-grossing film of the year. But Creed 3 changed all that and became the most successful movie in the trilogy, earning a whopping $170 million globally. That's huge considering that Sly, who brought the entire universe to life, wasn't even mentioned in the movie. Like, not even once. This proves that having Sly in the film wouldn't have been the best course of action here. Not that I know how the film would have turned out if he'd been a part of it, but the 7 out of 10 IMDb rating and 89% Rotten Tomatoes score, coupled with the insane praise the film's getting, proves that the franchise needed a new face to lead it. And who better than Michael B. Jordan to lead the way, right?
8-9 years playing this guy, Adonis Creed, has become a place for me to grow on screen and to release things in my personal life. I was able to, insert and talk about themes and feelings and emotions that I might have struggled with.
In fact, let's talk about Michael for a second. Now, I've spoken about Adonis and how Rocky had to take a back seat in this film for it to be successful. But I haven't even touched upon the main guy yet. MBJ's definitely proven that he has what it takes to bring the underdog spirit front and center in the film. I've always been a fan of his, and it's no secret that he's a great actor. But in Creed 3, he hit it right out of the park. The man was unstoppable, and with the stellar supporting cast that he had, his performance only had an even greater impact. Plus, let's not forget that Creed 3 was also MBJ's directorial debut, proving that he's not only an actor, but a multi-talented player in the entertainment biz. So, of course, I'm all praises for Jordan, and I could easily say that without Stallone, he really got his time to shine in the film. One could also argue that with Jordan in the leading role, telling Adonis' story the way he did, Creed became more than just some boxing movie. Despite this, there's still some fans who would argue that the film felt it was lacking a key ingredient, with Stallone not in it, while others are saying Creed 3 was a lot darker and grittier than previous Rocky or Creed films. But isn't that what we needed? I get that Sylvester had a lot of ideas for this movie, but had Sly's ideas been implemented, the film wouldn't have gone in the direction that it did, and there's a good chance that it wouldn't have been as successful. But at this point, with Creed 3 practically being the 9th film in its extended universe, we had to have something different to make up for the flops the last few Rocky films ended up being. Creed 3 explored more than just the underdog boxing spirit. It explored how past trauma can reshape our lives. This is something we saw in both the Rocky and Creed franchises. Whether you're a try-hard spirit like Adonis or a vengeful type like Damien, overcoming your past traumas can reshape your life, set you on the path to success, and maybe even glory. Speaking of Damien, I wouldn't be any good at my job if I didn't take a second to talk about actor Jonathan Majors. Majors really proved his acting chops in Creed 3, and was the most dangerous opponent Adonis ever had to face.
Because my manager calls me and says, hey, Michael B. Jordan wants your phone number. And I go, I was like, no, he doesn't. Me? He says, yeah. And I go, okay, cool.
Majors was dark, determined, and honestly gave a performance that no one will ever forget. In fact, he's been praised as the best villain in the franchise so far, which isn't something that can be taken lightly at this point. The chemistry between Majors and Jordan was enough to make me feel as if they were really blood enemies. Majors was the perfect fit for Creed 3's darker storyline, something that wouldn't have been possible if Sly had been part of the film, and more specifically, the screenwriting process. It's no secret that from the start, Sly wasn't a fan of the darker storyline, because he felt it was an excessive departure from the universe he'd created decades ago. So there you have it. From Majors giving the performance of his life, to Adonis' groundbreaking journey to becoming the hero. That's why Sylvester Stallone leaving Creed made it better.